All right, today we're jumping into a period that didn't just wreck the economy, it totally reshaped the American psyche. I mean, it changed how people thought about everything. We're going to look at the whole story of the Great Depression, from what the guys in Washington were doing all the way down to what families were going through just to get by.
So picture this, it's March of 1929. The roaring 20s are, well, roaring. Everyone's feeling good. A new president, Herbert Hoover, he gets up and gives this speech to a nation that is just overflowing with confidence. I mean, his words right here, they just perfectly capture that feeling. People honestly felt like the country was invincible, like they were this close to getting rid of poverty for good.
And then it all fell apart. That incredible hope that Hoover was talking about, it was about to be snuffed out in, well, the most dramatic way you can imagine. It plunged the entire country into this darkness that really nobody saw coming.
Okay, so let's really set the stage here. Hoover gets elected right at the absolute peak of this incredible decade of economic growth. I mean, he was the third Republican president in a row, and the vibe was basically, hey, don't rock the boat. The expectation was just keep the party going, keep doing what we've been doing, because on the surface, it seemed to be making everybody rich. And this timeline, man, it just shows you how fast everything went south. In March, Hoover's talking about a future bright with hope. By October, the stock market has completely crashed. And this wasn't just some random bit of bad luck. Nope, this was a massive bubble bursting. You had tons of people buying on margin, which is just a fancy way of saying they were borrowing money to buy stocks they couldn't really afford. So the second the market took a little dip, the whole house of cards just collapsed. The entire engine of the American economy just stalled. All in just 8 months. Unbelievable. So the country's in a total tailspin. What does the government do? Well, the answer really comes down to President Hoover's personal philosophy. It was this core belief system that totally shaped the first response to the crisis, a response that, as you can imagine, got a lot of criticism. See, Hoover was a huge believer in something he called voluntarism. Basically, his idea was that direct government help, what we call a bailout or welfare checks today, was actually bad for the American spirit. He thought it would kill our self-reliance. So instead, he asked businesses to please not cut wages, and he asked regular people to help their neighbors. He really believed the government should stay out of it as much as possible. And, maybe it sounds like a noble idea, but it was about to go up against a disaster on a scale no one had ever seen before. And this slide just perfectly shows the massive gap that was growing between Washington and reality. I mean, the government was passing these official-sounding acts, but out on the streets, people weren't feeling any help at all. So what did they do? They started giving these bitter, cynical nicknames to the symbols of their own poverty. Those shantytowns popping up everywhere, they called them Hoovervilles. A newspaper you used as a blanket to stay warm, that was a Hoover blanket. And the cardboard you'd stick in your shoes because the soles were gone? Yep, Hoover leather. Because you gotta understand, this thing wasn't just contained to Wall Street. Not even close. It was like a line of dominoes, and once the first one fell, it just knocked over every single part of American life. The government's policies, they were just no match for how big this collapse really was. I mean, just take a look at these numbers. In 1929, unemployment's sitting around 3%. That's basically what economists call full employment. Things are good. But then look, just 1 year later, it's almost quadrupled. And by 1932, well, it hits a level that is just catastrophic. It's hard to even wrap your head around. Yeah, 23%. Just let that sink in for a second. That means nearly 1 out of every 4 people who could work didn't have a job. Think about that. 1 in 4. The scale of that devastation is something that, honestly, is almost impossible for us to really imagine today. It was a total system failure. You had people panicking, rushing to the banks to pull their money out. These were the famous bank runs, and it caused thousands of banks to just collapse. People's entire life savings, gone overnight. Then the government passed a tariff trying to protect American businesses, but it backfired spectacularly. It basically choked off all international trade. So with no job, no savings, and a frozen economy, millions of people lost their homes.
But okay, those are all big abstract numbers. What did this actually feel like for the people on the ground? Let's zoom in a bit, move away from the stats, and get into the really personal and, yeah, often heartbreaking stories of what it took just to survive day to day. This first story, wow, it really gets to the heart of the mindset that was created during this time. Can you imagine being so careful with your money, so frugal,
that you would wash and reuse a disposable paper towel? For that generation, the idea of waste just wasn't an option. You didn't throw anything away until it was completely, absolutely 100% used up. And the stories from this time are just filled with this mix of incredible cleverness and just brutal, hard choices. So on one hand, you have people recycling everything way before it was cool just because they had to. And on the other hand, you have a story like this, a family having to make the gut-wrenching decision to eat their kid's pet rabbit just so they could have a meal. I mean, these weren't just problems you read about in the newspaper. This was real life every single day. This list just shows you the kind of sheer creativity that comes from having nothing. I mean, get this. You can't afford pantyhose? Okay, fine. You just draw the seam up the back of your legs with a pencil. You only have one bullet for your rifle? You learn how to bark a squirrel. That's where you shoot the tree next to it and the splinters stun the animal so you don't ruin the meat. Patterned flour sacks? Those became dresses for little girls. And yeah, this one's wild. Kids would actually scrape asphalt off the streets on a hot day and use it for chewing gum. Incredible.
And then there's this quote, which gives us a really powerful and I think often forgotten perspective. For a huge part of America, especially out in rural areas, the Great Depression wasn't some shocking new event. It was just a new name for the kind of poverty they'd been living in their entire lives. So after all that hardship, what's the legacy? What's left behind? Well, the Depression didn't just end one day and everything went back to normal. No way. It left these deep, permanent scars on an entire generation, creating a mindset that would stick around for decades to come. I mean, just try to imagine it. You watch your entire life savings just disappear because your bank failed. It's no wonder so many people from that era never trusted a bank again for the rest of their lives. You hear the stories, right? Grandparents hiding cash in coffee cans, stuffing it under the mattress, anywhere but in an institution they couldn't trust. That fear, that deep-seated instinct to save every single penny and always be ready for disaster, that was a lesson they taught their kids and their kids' kids. And that really leads to the biggest question of all, right? How does an entire generation even begin to recover from something like that? It's not just about the economy getting better. It's about how you get back your trust, your hope, your sense of safety in the world. After you've lived in constant fear for a decade, the psychological damage, you just can't measure it. And maybe the best answer we have is right here, in this simple phrase. This wasn't just a catchy saying. It was a code to live by, a code for survival. It perfectly captures the resilience, the incredible ingenuity, and the quiet dignity of a generation that stared into the abyss and just refused to give up. It's a truly powerful lesson in human endurance, one that was forged in one of the darkest chapters of this nation's story.